the question we're looking at, or the question in question, is, okay, it's my textbook. Bottom of, what is that, page 44. And this is specifically number 2. Okay, as per usual, right? You want to realize, or you want to make sure that even though you may see a lot of writing, right? You'll see, I'll write on the side here. You might see something such as number 10, and then an A, B, C, D, and then you'll see a leading question. And then you'll see a maybe 1, 2, and 3, right? And just as a quick reminder, remember these pieces contribute to this, but you should not answer these 3 on the bottom preemptively. In other words, do not answer until model is done. How about completed? Right? So no matter how confusing or how daunting it is, right? My questions are always subcategorized where you have pieces or components, as I call them properly, formally. And what happens is that they contribute to building your model. And only after the model is complete, then you answer the follow-up questions. So the moment that you feel or you have the urge to use this information to answer this or these, you are incorrect, right? That is not what you're supposed to do. This is a big no-no, this is a no, right? It's the other way around. You take these details and you answer these questions here, right? This is the correct way. Therefore, when you look at, if you have open in another tab or your phone or a tablet or whatever the case may be, right? I'll read it out, the questions really quick. And the first thing to do, instead of just attacking them, is to identify them. So remember, we have a part A. So these are the components first. Nope, that's not good. Okay, we have an A, we have a B, we have a C, and we have a D. If I read out A, which says, the company plans on using social media to spread their presence online. An advertising company will assist and agreed to pay 80 cents for each digital share. Suppose on the first day of a month, assuming 30 days in a month, the advertising is shared to 7 people initially. Each person, shares to 4 new people the next day, and so on. So when you hear that question, what kind of problem is that? That's open for anyone, by the way. Or in other words, if you hear you're not a good audible learner, right? You don't learn by just listening. Read part A for number 2, and then tell me what kind of question that is, please.
It's a summation problem.
Perfect. Thank you. And then summations, do they make us money, or at least for in terms of our class, right? When we're doing modelings or models in general, summations, do they make us money or cost us money?
It makes money, right?
Correct. And I would even go further by saying, how do you know it makes you money? But I'll answer that this time. This makes you money. And if you even have to know why, or how do you know why, it's the fact that it says pays 80 cents per share. Well, if you're getting paid, you're making money, right? You're not owing money of some sorts. So there's that. Excellent. Okay, letter B, it says the employees are paid some finite amount less than 200,000 every month. So remember, if just to get everyone back on track, we're not doing any of the math just yet. We're identifying, because I remember, what was it? I think about 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 to 4 lectures ago, people were saying like, hey, I don't even know how to go about this. And I go, okay, well, let me attempt to debunk this in such a way where we align with people's way of thinking so that we can attack this in the smoothest way. Because even though students may say the correct thing, that correct thing, whatever it may be, may not shed any additional light or detail to help you pick the right thing to do or use, okay? Letter B, it says the employees, again, are paid some finite amount less than $200,000, okay? What kind of problem is that? And just to give you a hint, it's not a finance question, right? It's not a summation, obviously. It's not a compound anything. It's just a representation of the employees being paid. So what algebraic concept is that?
Would it be a theoretical question?
It is a little bit theoretical. Those types of questions that I asked in terms of a calculating, a theoretical, or a manipulating, those are more for the follow-up questions. Let me write that here really quick. So note these follow-up questions. Actually, I won't even say note, it's more like a recall. These follow-up questions are theoretical. They can be, not all of them at once, of course. They can be calculating, or they can be manipulating or manipulative. Manipulative. What I was looking for here is, this is just a variable, right? That's the algebraic concept here. It's not anything that we learned formally in the class. It's just that if you have people being paid, it's some finite amount. You don't know the amount. You just know it's less than 200,000 every month. You know it's a variable, and that's all it is. And this makes us or costs us money.
Costs?
Yep, costs us money, right? Because we're paying someone else. Costs money. Okay, number 3, or part C, if you will. Now this one, you don't see too often because it's from the first exam or the first half of the class. So that's why I put it in the review instead of homeworks, because it's an irregularity, but it's a good review overall. I just put it in the format of question for modeling. It says that the company wants to make a deposit the first month only and has the following choices. So you're going to make a deposit and you got 2 accounts to choose from, and they're right there. And then I even say, once the better investing account is determined, the effective interest rate, calculate how much is needed to make, what is that, 150,000 in 20 years. So I already gave you what kind of question it is. So it's a 2-parter. It's an effective interest rate. Effective interest rate. So that first you have to use to determine which of those two accounts you're going to use, right? Whether it's 5 3/8% or 5 7/8%. And then after that, right, what kind of question is it? What kind of financial concept is it? It's a double whammy. I already told you effective interest rate, and we'll talk about that once we get through these parts right here. But that's the first part. But once you pick the correct percentage, whether it's 5 3/8 or 5 7/8, right? What are you using to calculate how much needs to be deposited to make $150,000 in 20 years?
Is it compounding period?
It is compounding period, right? If you want to be more generic, you could just call this a compound and one time. Okay, why is that? If we generically say compounding period, my follow-up question will always be, well, are we depositing more than once or just once, right? In other words, how do you know if it's an annuity or not? Or how do you know if you're depositing one time or not? So compound is correct, right? Compounding period. However, if you look at the percentages, 5 3/8%, it says compound continuously. And the bottom one says 5 7/8%, which says compounded monthly. So they both have compound in there. What do they share in common? They're both one time. So this problem effectively is a one-time deposit. And you know that because it says right there, the first sentence, the company wants to make a deposit the first month only. Okay. After you make this deposit, it is going to make you money or cost you money.
Cost?
Yep. So you're going to make money in the future. But if you had to deposit that money now, you're losing it, right? So it's gone, sadly, at least for the moment. Last part, letter D, a lease is $100,000 for the office is accepted at 5% for 20 years. What kind of problem is that?
Present value annuity.
Perfect. Okay, and I will even take it a step further. It is the present value annuity. What variable are we solving for? The P or the R?
R.
And I'm going to take it even one last step further. How do you know it's R and not P?
Because it's a recurring payment.
All annuities are reoccurring payments, aren't they?
Yes, but it's for the lease. So I always like whenever the question is asking about lease, I always just try to remember that I'm trying to find R, not P.
Which is true. No, that's great. Which is absolutely true in terms of modeling questions. Because
Yeah.
if you're a pattern reader, which is great. Sorry, I don't recognize whose voice that is.
It's me.
But Maeve, thank you. If you noticed patterns already, if you did a future value annuity or a present value annuity, you're always solving for the recurring payment because you're moving on a monthly basis. It's just logical that way.
Yeah.
If you want to take it even a step further, the more generic way to realize it is that they told you that the lease is valued at how much? 100,000. Well, if you already have a valued lease at 100,000, you can't be solving for the lease value itself. They already told you what it is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you pattern it like Maeve, excellent job. That's great because that's a great way to shut me up. It's like, well, you only do it one way, so that's the way I have to do it, which is absolutely true. However, if you want to take it in a more grand arching way, like how do you know when you're solving for that present value, whether it's like, oh, I am getting the monthly payment or not? It's the numbers they give you, right? That 100,000 present value R to solve and then I'll just put in parentheses down here, 100,000 is P, which is given. And then I'm just gonna tell everyone that this costs money, obviously. Okay, so everyone that spoke up, thank you. You know, it obviously, you know, it's not the most fun thing, but you know that if you say it, it moves class along quicker. Okay, now these details I just scribbled out, that is not written in the solution, right? Because I just wrote the solution. So if you take a moment to look at the answers, right? That's what they are, right? The summation, I'm just gonna rewrite the model here. I'm not gonna write it symbolically. I'm just gonna write it out with the numbers or numerically. So this is your base model here. So part A tells you that you're making, what is that? 8 cents per view of this website. You're going to, let's use different colors here. You're going to subtract some amount that you're paying your colleagues, because assuming that you're the owner, right? Now, letter C, I told you how to do the effective interest rate. And if your formula sheet is not out and you're looking at it, remember that should be the 4th row of your formula sheet. So remember, those formulas specifically have to do with effective interest rate. If you see effective interest rate, that is the only formula for you to use to determine which one is better. So if you look at part C, and this time in the answers, I show you 5%, 5 3/8%, sorry, at compound continuously, there's the equation, and then it equals a certain amount. And then, wait, why does that number look wrong? Hold on, let me check this number. It looks really low for some reason. Oh, 5 plus 3 divided by 8 minus 1. E to the 0.05 divided by 100. 3 divided by 8. 0.05522. Oh, I guess it was right. Okay. Sorry, it just looked like a typo for a moment. And then you can see that it's compound continuously, so it's using, I believe that should be the second formula for effective interest rate. And then what happens is that, I'll write this in a different color here. For the effective interest rate, you use the percent or count, however you want to think of it, that has the highest payout, has the highest payout. Right? In other words, if you look between 5 3/8% and 5 7/8%, and you look at the very end, you can see that the 5 3/8%, it gives you an effective interest rate of 0.05522 and so on, which is basically 5.52%. And then the bottom one gives you 0.06035 ... percent, which is basically 6.04% if you round it. So that means we have to use not the 5 3/8, but we use the 5 7/8%. Since you know it's the 5 7/8% compound monthly, that now allows you to realize that since you know you must use 5 and what does I say, 7/8% compound monthly, you use this formula. And then the additional details I told you come after that fact. So maybe you might ask, oh, where did the 150,000 come from? Well, if you scroll up, right, you can see that after it says if you scroll back to the original letter C, it says once the better investing account is determined via effective interest rate, calculate how much is needed to make 150,000. So that 150,000 and the 20 years, you don't use that until you find out which account to use for the effective interest rate. And that matters because if you happen, in this example, if the compound continuously happened to be the higher yield or the account that makes you more money, you would be using this formula instead, but you're not. See, so there's two choices there, and it's determined by figuring out the highest payout, which I labeled out here. It's either going to be the formula in black here or the formula I just scribbled in purple. However, the purple one didn't work this time, and the reason is that the effective interest rate tells you which one to use. So that's how you got that answer there, which was 46,000. So just wanted to take a little detour to describe that, but here is that number, 46,455.84. I also noticed, I know I already sent you all an email about your homework. When people got the answers that were just a little bit off from what I got, and I saw you do the little asterisk or star or question mark, which I appreciate because then that gives you comments on it. Remember, those that are setting up the question correctly but still calculating correctly, you're not doing anything wrong. You just got to remember parentheses. The parentheses will separate the parts where you need, and then you'll be able to get the right answer properly. And last but not least, we have this lease, and then as Maeve already said, it's a present value annuity. So I'm just going to write down the answer here. So this is the base model, right? You start with this, and only after here you can answer those follow-up questions, which I scribbled right here in the upper right-hand corner. So before I move on, even though I did not physically write out the math for you because of two reasons. One, the answers are already there, so you can look it up yourself. More importantly, though, it's the distinguishing each of these A, B, C, D, or however many components that build the model, and then you know what to use financially or mathematically or algebraically to get your components, right? This black summation on the bottom represents the summation. That purple X represents the variable. Effective interest rate that I was explaining right here, that represents this navy number, and then the present value, of course, is this light green or puke green color there. So what questions do we have up until here about identifying, and then from there it implies which concept we use that we've learned in the past. All right, I don't hear anything right now, so that's okay. It's not like an actual answer like those that I expect people to say something, but if you don't have anything right now, that's fine. Just remember you can email me after. Now, since the model is complete, we can now answer the follow-up questions. And then as someone mentioned earlier, it may have been Camila, if I heard the correct voice, the questions could result of theoretical, calculated, or manipulative, right? This is strictly with the follow-up questions. So one way to look at it is just to look at this only the model, and then now we can ask these questions right here. The first follow-up question, right? It's under what says leading question, and then remember, leading question is just another way to say make the model for me. So we're gonna say follow-up question one, follow-up question one. Q1. It asks you, what does it ask you? What changes do you observe from the first month to the second month, right? I should be a little more specific about that. What changes do you observe from the first month to the second month's model? First month's to the second month's model. Okay. What changes do we see? We got your base model right here. There's the word base. Base is basically your first month, right? We always go from there. And then what changes do you see, or do you see, do you have the foresight to see that you predict will happen? You know, whatever that terminology is, but what do you foresee being different from when you move from month 1 to month 2? Look at this dip. I just lost a ton of money. It's at $55 now. I think I should buy more.
For the second month's model, isn't it basically that the part C portion would be gone because you're only using that for the first month? So that 46,000, and then everything else would be the
Perfect.
same.
Exactly. So these details, thank you very much. Right here, right, you're still making money. You're still paying employees. And you're still paying your lease, but since this was strictly told or defined as one time, right, you would assume that it would follow through, but actually it's not. And I'm going to say here, because, that is not how you spell because. Is a one-time payment. Now, if you're asked a question like that on the final, you can show me like this, or you can write in words, because it's relatively straightforward in that sense. So very good, thank you for that. Yeah, that's all it is. And that leads us to, how large is question 2, so I can change this correctly. Yeah, here we go. So the follow-up question for number 2, before you answer what the actual changes are, here's a better way to think of it. Which component is being referenced? That is a D. I need a B, being referenced. And that may help you streamline your thinking as you're answering these follow-up questions. And I'll read it out here. It says, how would your profit margin change if on the 3rd month, the number each new person shares is only 2 instead of 4? And I go, justify your answer by explaining in detail or rework your model appropriately. That English sounds a little bit off. How would your profit margin change if on the 3rd month, the number of each new share, the number of each new share reaches 2 people, 2 new people instead of 4. All right. So basically, in other words, at the beginning of the model, it told you that it's going to grow by 4 people every day. Now it's going to grow only by 2 people instead of 4. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. So you might want to pay attention to this question I just wrote down. Which component is being referenced, right? Am I talking about part A, B, C, or D within the model?
Part A, right? The summation?
Yep, part A for the summation. And then what you're supposed to realize is that this 4 has now changed to a 2. So whether you rewrite the model, which I'm going to do really quick right now, what did I write here as the answer? Growth summation. Oh, okay. So I said, right, I said that the growth factor is halved. Okay, that's one technical way to go about it. Another way you could have said this is just to say, not note, but written, notice the growth factor decreases, which implies a slower margin growth. Sorry, profit margin, income margin. A slower growth in income. Let's say that, slower growth in income. And that's what's unique about this, right? If you're more algebraic and you like to plug in variables and change things and alter numbers, cool, no problem. If you're a more written person because you find it more eloquently to express yourself that way, that's fine as well. Either way would have been correct, okay? So this is for follow-up 2. And then number 3, by the way, this would be a manipulation question, if anyone's curious, right? Because you omit that 46,000. Here is also a manipulation question because you have changed the summation itself, which means for follow-up question number 3 now, you may notice that it says calculate the new profit portion for the first 7 days. And this is obviously a calculating because, well, I tell you to calculate. That one's a little more straightforward. And also notice, though, that I just gave you the answer of $711.20, right? How do we do that? Remember, it's the summation. You go until the 7th day because I told you it was 7. You still use these numbers, but you use the 2 now instead of the 4. And you're only doing this portion. So that means you write this out 7 times, right? 7 times 2 minus 1 plus 7 times 2 minus 1 plus 7 times 2 minus 1 plus 7 times 2 minus 1. Because I doubt that everyone knows how to do this on their calculator, and you need the proper graphing calculator for it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 7.2 minus 1 plus 7.2 minus 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then remember the summation increases by 1 at a time. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I even had people go, how do I calculate that? How do I put that in a calculator? You shouldn't. You should totally simplify those exponents so that it's just 7 times 2 to the 0, which is actually just 7. So it becomes 7 plus 7 times 1. plus 7 times, no, not 1, apologies. 7 times 2, 7 times 2 squared, plus 7 times 2 to the third, plus 7 times 2 to the fourth. Ooh, this is hard to say out loud while I'm writing. Fifth, plus 7 times 2 to the sixth. This is how you should enter your calculator. Not with all those minus ones right there. That's too hard, right? I mean, can you do it? Yeah, but why on earth would you go through the trouble of doing raise, open parentheses, 3 minus 1, close, plus whatever. No, you can all simplify exponents easily in your head and just realize it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes one number less than the original. So you get that number, that's the total number of people, and then you multiply that by 0.8, right? Don't forget the 0.8 here. And then that will give you the actual money made in that case. Okay. What other questions do we have on modeling right now? Or this modeling question, I'm sorry. Now, this one isn't exactly like the extra credit problem. However, the pieces, the moving pieces are quite similar to it. So there's nothing wrong with that. What about other questions?